guys, I actually just finished recording this video and I didn't actually press record. What is going on with me with all these recording problems? Well, the upside is that hopefully you can tell I have a new camera. Hopefully the audio and the picture, most of all, are much better quality. So I'm going to get into this again, which is hilarious because the other one was quite long, because you know what we're getting into? All of the prophets! Okay, we're not getting into all of the prophets because not all the prophets are named in the Quran. We're going to get into the prophets that are named in the Quran. So how many are there? There are 25. That's right. I did a video on all 25 prophets and I completely lost all the footage. No, I didn't even lose the footage. I just didn't record. I was just sitting here talking at a camera that wasn't recording. Some of these prophets you will have already been familiar with, such as Adam, Noah, Moses, Jesus. You guys know these prophets. John the Baptist. There are tons of prophets that you guys are definitely familiar with, especially if you're Jewish or Christian. So I'm just going to do a basic overview of the prophets. I'm not going to get into them too deeply, but just know that if you hear a prophet's name and it interests you, go ahead and comment down below and say, hey, I kind of liked what you had to say about, I don't know, for instance, Moses. Can I hear more about him? And I will make a video about Moses. So actually, I'm going to be doing a video all about the prophet Isa, or Jesus, peace be upon him. So you don't need to ask about Isa, because I'm already doing one. But you can ask about any of the other ones that I mention. The ones that I know very well, I will probably say something like, ooh, I know about them. Go ahead and ask me if I can make a video on them. And that'll probably be your cue that I actually would like to make a video about them. But you know, it's fine. If there's a prophet that I don't talk about like that, it just means that I'm not super familiar with their story, but I would love to become super familiar with their story. So if there are any prophets that sound interesting to you, just drop a comment down below. Our first prophet is the prophet Adam. Adam was the very first human. He was the father of the entire human race and was the first Muslim. That kind of gets into why we call ourselves reverts. I should say people who were not Muslim and become Muslim, why we call ourselves reverts. As Adam was the first Muslim, he was born a Muslim. We believe that everybody comes into the world as Muslims, but you choose your own path. So, if you decided you didn't have a religion, or you wanted to follow Christianity or whatever, and then you come back to Islam and you become a Muslim again, then you have reverted. So, that's why we call ourselves reverts. Some people say convert. I prefer revert, but you know what? You do you, boo. Adam and his wife Hawa, also known as Eve, were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and it's the exact same story that's in the Bible. So if you want to hear about that, you can comment down below, and I will talk to you all about it. Our next prophet is the prophet Idris, also known as Enoch. Idris was the third prophet after Adam. He was also devoted to the study of ancient books that his ancestors wrote, so he was a very learned man. Our next prophet is Noah, also known as Noah. Now, okay, hold on one second. If I'm getting any of these Arabic names wrong, I am so sorry. I am still learning Arabic, and it's going okay, but I don't have anything. I do have some things. I don't have everything, I should say, down pat yet. So if I pronounce things wrong, I'm very sorry. You can correct me down below if you want to. It's okay. You are probably familiar with the story of Noah's Ark, even if you are not Jewish or Christian or Muslim. I'm sure you know it. But we'll kind of go over it, and I can go into more detail in a different video if you guys would like. So Noah lived among unbelievers. So none of them believed in the oneness of God. And they were doing everything that you could possibly do that was bad. So Noah was called to preach the oneness of God to the unbelievers. Allah is the most merciful. Allah is always willing to give a second chance. So even though these people were doing terrible things and were unbelievers and did not believe in the oneness of God, Allah was willing to give them that second chance. Noah preached for years and years and years, and it was completely fruitless. Nothing came of it. He tried and tried and tried and tried, and it did not work. So Allah sent a warning to Noah. He said, Yo, Noah, okay, he didn't say it like that, but he said, Noah, there's going to be a disaster. I am going to flood the earth, so you need to protect yourself. Noah built an ark, and he took his family and took animals with him, and was saved from the destruction of the entire earth. Our next prophet is Hud, also known as Heber. Hud was sent to preach to the Arabic descendants of Noah. These descendants were called the Ad. They were desert traders who did not believe in the oneness of God. So Hud went and tried to preach to them, tried to teach them the straight path, but they did not accept it. So the Ad were destroyed by a sandstorm for ignoring Hud's words. Our next prophet is the prophet Salim, also known as Methuselah. 200 years after Hud, Salim was sent to the Thamud. The Thamud were descendants of the Ad, right? So Allah is trying again. He's like, okay, the Ad, you didn't do it, but the Thamud, okay, I'm going to try again. He sent Salim to preach the oneness of God. Now, the Thamud, they wanted some proof. They weren't just going to take this whole oneness of God thing at face value. They wanted solid proof. So, they told him, they said, give us a miracle. Come on, just a little miracle. Give us a miracle. So they took a pile of rocks and they said, okay, bro, turn this pile of rocks into a camel and we will believe you. Do you know what happened? He did it. Salah did it. But the Thamud still didn't believe him. The Thamud actually plotted to kill that camel so they could continue to deny the oneness of God. They were destroyed by an earthquake and a volcano for plotting to kill that camel, and for the bigger picture of denying the oneness of God. Our next prophet, most of you know, especially if you are Christian, it is Ibrahim. Ibrahim is the same as Abraham. Well, he's called Abraham in the Bible. Same guy. Same guy. So you probably know all about Ibrahim, but let me refresh. Ibrahim was told to settle in the land of Canaan. That land was now for Ibrahim and his family. He was a revered teacher and the father and grandfather to many, many prophets to come. And, fun fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is actually one of his descendants. Our next two prophets are sons of Abraham. Their names are Ishak and Ismail, or Isaac and Ishmael. Let's start with Ismail. As I said, Ismail was one of Abraham's sons. Now he's got a little bit of an interesting story. Abraham was married to a woman named Sarah. Sarah had a slave, an Egyptian slave called Hagar. Sarah was infertile. She couldn't have babies. So she gave Hagar to Abraham so that they could have children. There's more to it than that. That's just a very condensed version. So if you'd like to hear more of the reasoning for why she was so desperate to have kids and why she gave Hagar to Abraham, just let me know, put it in the comments down below, and I will make a video all about it. So Ismail was actually brought to Mecca by his father. Ishak was also Abraham's son. And he and his brother Ismail continued to preach about the oneness of God years and years after their father's death. Now, our next prophet, I'm sure all of you have heard of. The prophet Lot, or Lot. If that doesn't sound familiar, then this next part will probably sound familiar. He was the prophet to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. You familiar now? He was sent to preach the oneness of God, as prophets are, and sent to, help them not be so wicked, help them to be more hospitable, help them to not be the cruel people that they were. Allah knew they were doomed. He just did, because he is Allah. Allah knows all. But because he is ever merciful, Allah decided to give them a second chance and send Lot to them. Unfortunately, they did not listen to Lot and were destroyed. Our next prophet is Yaakov, also known as Jacob. Jacob was father to the 12 tribes of Israel. He was actually also in Abraham's family. So what are the 12 tribes of Israel? The 12 tribes represent the 12 different divisions of the Jewish people at the time. I don't know much more about it than that, but I can look more into it and talk to you guys more about the children of Israel. But I do know the names of the sons. Well, I know the names of the sons that the tribes were named after. So, those sons were Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Again, I'm so sorry if I pronounce those super bad and wrong, but there you have it. I tried. I did my best, guys. I did my best. Our next prophet is the prophet Yusuf, also known as Joseph. Now, those 12 people that I just mentioned, of the 12 tribes, they were not the only son of Yaakov, okay? Not the only son. Joseph, or Yusuf, was one of them. Yusuf was actually the most beloved son of Yaakov. You guys probably know him as Joseph of the many-colored coat, Joseph of the coat of many colors. There are other names for it, just basically he had a coat with lots of colors. I can get more into that and why the coat is significant in another video. Just let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to hear more about it. So his brothers didn't like him, and they threw him into a well. He was rescued. He ended up being rescued by a traveling caravan who just happened to be passing by. Our next prophet is Shuel, also known as Jethro. He was sent to the Midianite, not Mennonite, Midianite, I think is how it says. I will put it up here. But he was sent to them to preach the oneness of God. That is probably a phrase that you are getting used to hearing about these prophets. But yes, prophets are sent to preach the oneness of God to people who don't believe in the oneness of God. For instance, these people believed in a sacred tree. That was their God. Midianites did not listen to Shuel, and they were destroyed by Allah. Our next prophet, if you are a Christian, you probably know who this is. I bet Jewish people do too, but I know that I knew who this was from Sunday school. The prophet Job. In Islam, we call him Ayub. And no, not Job from Arrested Development. Great show, by the way. Check it out. But yeah, not that Job. Ayub. He suffered for a long time. He was tested over and over and over again with terrible trials. And he kept strong to his faith. Not once did he give up on God. Not once did he say, oh, there must not be a God because all this horrible stuff is happening to me. No, he stuck true to his faith. Never forget that Allah tests the ones he loves the most. Next up is Musa, also known as Moses. I am sure we are all familiar with Moses, right? One who parted the Red Sea. I can actually talk about that story in another video if you want. I'm not getting into that here. I'll just give you a brief overview of who Moses was. So he was brought up as an Egyptian royal in the Egyptian royal court. You may be familiar with that if you are not Christian or Jewish from the movie The Prince of Egypt. Now, I'm not going to recommend the Prince of Egypt just yet, because I actually don't remember if it is Islamically correct or not. And I feel weird recommending something that might not align with my beliefs, but it... You guys, my camera just shut off. It saved my stuff. Don't worry, we're not going to have a, oh my gosh, everything's deleted thing now. No. It just shut off recording because my battery was low, and it does not record when my battery is low. So, it's plugged in. Let's see where I was. I don't even remember where I was, other than that I was talking about Moses. Allah commanded him to preach the oneness of God to the Egyptians. There's more to that story, you know, the whole part in the Red Sea thing, but I'm not going to get into that right now. If you would like to hear more about it, comment down below, and I will make another video about it. Musa was actually given the revelation of the Torah, also known as the Torah. That is the book of the Jewish people. Next we have Harun, or Aaron, who was Musa's brother. Harun was actually the first high priest of the Israelites. Next we have Dulkifil, or Ezekiel. Dulkifil lived in Iraq and was given to his parents by Allah. Dulkifil prophesied and acted out the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple. Our next prophet is the prophet Dawud. I love that name. Do you love that name? I just like saying it. Dawud. Just, it's cool. Anyway, Prophet Dawud, also known as David. He was a king of Israel. Dawud also received the divine revelation of Psalms. Next, we have Salim, also known as Solomon. Solomon was the son of Dawud. He was kind of cool, and again, I can talk more about him in the comments below, but 2 fun facts. He could talk to animals, and he could talk to jinn. He was also the 3rd king of the Jewish people, and was known not only as just a king, but as one of the greatest rulers of the entire world. And by that, I don't mean he was like a world, like leader of the world. I mean, he's considered one of the greatest leaders that the world has ever seen. Okay, hope that was a little more clear. Our next prophet is the prophet Elias, also known as Elias or Elias. He lived in the northern kingdom of Israel. He defended Allah as the one true God against the worshippers of the Baal, also known as idol worshippers. After that comes Elias, also known as Elisha. Elias grew up under the care of Elias and actually became Elias's successor. Our next prophet is the prophet Yunus, or Jonah. You are all probably very, very familiar with the story of Jonah the whale. So I won't really recount it now. If you want to hear more about it, again, comment down below and I will make a video about it. So as I said, Jonah was swallowed by a big fish, a whale. He was saved by Allah when he repented for what he had done wrong and praised and glorified God. Next we have Zechariah. It's just Zechariah. Same either way. He was the father to a prophet who was most commonly known as John the Baptist, who I will get to in just a second. He was also the guardian of Miriam, the mother of the prophet Isa, or Jesus, peace be upon him. He actually lost his life for his faith. The last 3 prophets, I think, are the most well-known prophets, but that's just my opinion. First we have Yahya, or John the Baptist. He was the witness to the word of Allah, who would herald the arrival of the prophet Isa, or Jesus. After Yahya was Isa, also known as Jesus. Now, a lot of people think that the prophet Isa is only a Christian person, that only Christians believe in the prophet Isa. Well, that's not true. Muslims believe that Isa was a messenger of truth, that he preached the straight path. He preached the oneness of God. Look out for that video on the prophet Isa. It is coming soon. And after Isa was the final prophet. Do you guess who that is? Ding, 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 you got it! The Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the final prophet. I can't get into Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, full story because there is so much to it. That can be another video in and of itself. So let me know if you want to hear about it. I'm not going to be able to tell every single aspect of his life story. There's scholars spend their lives devoted to that, but I can tell some stories that I know, not just stories, actually. I can tell you facts that I know if you want in another video. So just let me know down below. Now, an interesting thing is that Jesus, or Isa, as we call him, was sent as leader to the children of Israel. But a lot of Christians believe he was sent to be the leader of all humanity. Actually, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent to be the leader of humanity. And not being like a king or some rich guy who has all the power. No, he would be the leader who would lead everybody to the straight path, to the oneness of God. So those are all 25 prophets. Whew! I wonder if this is going to be a long one or not. I haven't even looked to see how long the recordings are, especially because my camera blacked out on me, and so I don't even know how long the previous one before this recording was. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to know more about the prophets, let me know which prophet in the comments down below, and I will make a video dedicated to that prophet. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It means a lot to me, and it really helps out the channel. In fact, even just a like or a comment really helps my channel out. So if you don't feel like subscribing, at least hit that like button. At least drop a comment. It's really helpful to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Okay,